everyone. I'm Kim Coghill with ACA International in the Washington, D.C. office. ACA is the leading voice for the accounts receivable management industry. The content provided in this podcast is presented for educational and general reference purposes only. The content is not intended to serve as legal advice. Before we get started on ACA's cast titled Managing Your Brand, I'd like to remind everyone that registration is now open for Fall Forum November 6th through 8th, 2019 in Chicago at the Drake. So back to today's episode titled Managing Your Brand. This podcast follows a very successful session we had at the Convention Expo in San Diego. It was a standing room only, so we invited all the speakers back today to kind of pick up where they left off and give you some more information. So with us, we have David Williams, President of Williams Fudge, Inc. We have Debra Ciskey, Executive Vice President of the Collections Coach, Wendy Badger, Vice President, Corporate Compliance at ECMC, and Teri Plunkett. She is the Regional Manager of Client Services at Professional Financial Company, Inc. And these experts will cover steps to managing and responding to indirect complaints and reviews. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Debra, who will moderate. Go ahead, Debra.
All right, thank you for that introduction. This is Debra Ciskey. I'm here with Wendy Badger and Teri Plunkett and David Williams. We're happy to talk to everybody about how to manage your brand, and we're going to refer back to the session that we did on this very topic at ACA's 2019 Convention and Expo in San Diego, California. As we talk about brand management, we're going to first talk about what can happen that can do damage to your brand, then kind of talk about keys to owning your story and of how you can manage your brand by keeping track of what your website says, keeping it up to date, and being involved in your community and how you can use that to also tell your own story. As you may have heard, that you should tell your own story so that you have control over it. If you let others tell your story for you, then you might not like exactly what that story says. So I'm going to jump in by just talking about what can damage your brand. Since about 2010, we've been dealing with the fact that complaints against our companies are very public, thanks to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's complaint database. So it's not just debt collectors in that database, but all kinds of financial services companies. Potential clients and consumers can take a look at that database, even download it and kind of slice and dice the information any way they would choose to find out as much about our companies and the potential issues that people are complaining about, which can be damaging to our brand, or even more so if people decide to use that information for their own regard and maybe to our detriment. The complaints on the Better Business Bureau website are also public, maybe not to the extent that they publish data, but they do publish complaints and our potential responses on their website. So that's another way that our brand can be damaged. The other thing that we see from time to time are online reviews from companies you've heard of like Yelp, Yahoo Reviews, and other places that publish publicly generated reviews of companies. These are a little bit harder to respond to. Sometimes it's hard to identify the consumer that has made the complaint, so it's hard to give a response. We also don't want to give too specific a response online because we need to protect the privacy of the consumer. But these are all things that can be damaging to our brand. David, would you agree with me about that as it relates to your website? I know you have a good website and you use it to do some of those things.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. My name is David Williams, and I'm with Williams Fudge, Incorporated in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and happy to talk with everybody about this today a little bit. I think that one of the things that we talk about is a lot like when you go online to look at reviews of a retail place or other places, there's going to be some bad reviews that just about anybody has, and when you kind of look to see how a company or an organization responds to that, I think everybody can pretty much know that, it might be a person that had a bad experience, those kind of things, and understand that that might not be a proper reflection of the company. Of course, for us in our industry, we're going to have more of that than normal, but I think still people understand that the nature of our business sometimes isn't that people want to necessarily hear from us. when that does happen, and when we do have people that go online and leave those reviews that are more on, the situation that they're in possibly than the way that we handle the account, then we want to be able to show that we've responded and done something. You have to be careful with how you respond. I mean, there's very limited response you can do, but we do want to reach out to them when they are on the online reviews and say, hey, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you about it. One thing that we've done is we've created a website that is kind of made for responses and made for people to have an outlet, because a lot of times what people are looking for is just an outlet to vent. They can do that through our website, which is WF Cares, where you can go in and say, hey, I've got an issue with my balance, or I have a question about this, and it gives them an outlet to touch base with us. And we have an ombudsman on staff who's really, really good at responding to that, and then also hopefully communicating with the consumers over the phone to be able to talk through, whatever complaint or whatever situation issue they have to try to defray that. Because with any kind of response that we're doing, what we want to do is we want to be as quick as possible to respond to the consumer, because the quicker we can do that, the less likely that they're going to go to the BBB or AG or consumer attorney or some of the other places that CFPB, obviously, or some of the other places that consumers might go. So if we can get them on the phone, if we can talk to them, if we can defray whatever has got them upset, then we want to handle that internally as much as we can.
Hey, David, this is Debra again. I have a question for you related to what you have on your website. Do you have, and I'd like the other panelists also to provide feedback on this. Do you have a frequently asked questions section on your website where people can kind of learn about how your company does business and debt collection in general?
We do, and we try to utilize links to other places so that people can be informed. And one of the things that we find, we're in higher education, and in the higher education market, I should say, and what we find is a lot of times people just don't understand the nature of their loan or the nature of how they got it, where they got it. What they're able to do is their options like consolidating or deferring or forbearance or different things. So we have a lot of higher education specific examples out there, then a lot of collection specific examples as well, just so people can really understand what their options are, because we, at the end of the day, we're trying to help people to get out of default, to figure out the best way that they can move forward by paying their bill, or if there's other options that are available. And I think that the more that you have out there that are what we would call good resources for the consumers, I think they're going to utilize that more than trying to reach out to some of what we would consider bad resources for them.
This is Wendy. Similarly, we also have an ombudsman on staff who can help research the complaints, respond to them, even in some circumstances identify an anonymous reviewer and help figure out what account that is, and then privately reach out to that consumer to try and resolve the issue. And I would also underscore what David said. A lot of the times it's about a misunderstanding. Their terminology is different than what we would use. We're using the industry terminology or the terminology from the statutes or the regulations. David mentioned forbearances, deferments, consolidations. I'll even talk about garnishments or offsets and things like that. Consumers don't often know what those words mean. They just know either in a garnishment or an offset situation, somebody's taking my money and I want my money. I don't think I owe this debt. So they don't know the difference necessarily between a garnishment or an offset. Much like David was talking about, we not only have a frequently asked questions on our website, we also have a glossary of terms and links to different other organizations, whether that be the Department of Education, like David referenced, to help folks understand how they got to where they are and help them figure out what their best path is forward. And that might be different for each individual. So our ombudsman then also is able to help take some of those accounts that do maybe require some more research off of our collection floor so that those folks can focus on making more calls or taking the inbound calls and not necessarily diving into the research that's going to take a little bit longer. And I think that really helps in the consumer's mind as well, a measure of attention and treatment that they didn't think for whatever reason they were getting before, that their issue is going to be addressed. They're getting some individualized attention. So we found that's really helped as well, to the point where we've also had some individuals who have filed complaints with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Better Business Bureau, their state AG, and when they got in touch with our ombudsman staff and our complaint management group, they've subsequently withdrawn those complaints because they got the attention they were needing. They just didn't know where to go for it internally.
That's great. I think ombudsman seems to be kind of more of a common practice in this, maybe in the student loan vertical than some of the others. I certainly think it's something that could be copied in all different kinds of agencies.
Yeah, Debra, this is Wendy. I would definitely agree with that. In many instances in the higher education space, in that market that David mentioned, an ombudsman is required under the student loan regulations. So many organizations have one for that reason, but it has certainly been duplicated. I know there's a couple of companies that I've talked with who have an ombudsman for their employees if they feel their grievances haven't been heard or their issues or complaints from an employee perspective. So it's not unique to the student loan industry, but I do think there's certainly a measure of it that started there.
This is Teri Plunkett. We have a consumer relations specialist, and we primarily operate in the medical and utility space. And we have someone that we want to handle those complaints as early on possibly as we can as well. And we encourage people to contact us directly and to take care of them online. And it's the same situation, although we're not required to do so. We want them to contact PFC directly. We want to take care of them, and we want to handle the situation, as we call it, as close to the desk level as we possibly can.
That sounds like a really efficient way of handling it. I do know a lot of agencies now are accepting email from consumers through their websites, whether it's a request for verification or a dispute, or sometimes those do include complaints. And so the easier we make it for a consumer to contact us directly, I think the better off we'll be in terms of our reputation and our brand and managing that brand. Those are, I think, all very good examples of those things. I think the other thing that we can feature on our website and elsewhere as well is our involvement in the community. I think if people see that we're good community citizens, then that is going to help us in a broader sense, not only in our communities, but with our clients as well. I know, David, your company is very involved in your community. Can you talk a bit about how you kind of got started in that and kind of what you do today with employee involvement in your process in your community?
One of the core focuses of our company is really to give back and to support our community, and it's been neat to see that evolve. Being a family business, that's one of the things that's been important to us. It's been neat to see that evolve over the years and see our employees really taking charge on doing some of the community work, and then we combine that with a little bit of our corporate social media presence, and that I believe it really helps us with is recruitment. A lot of employees, kind of see what we do in the community and are drawn to that, because I think in this day and age, a lot of why people work or why people choose employers are changing, and they want someone that has a good corporate spirit about them where they are. It is about more than just what you do when you come to work every day. It's about how you care for people, how you care for your community, and those type of things. So we've done anywhere from, we do a lot with our school district, really focusing on the kids in our area and help them to be the best they can be as they grow and become employees pretty quickly. And so we also have worked with some other organizations that are really tied closely to kind of what we do as a company, where we're trying to help teach financial literacy through some of our local schools, both at the secondary level, well, really all through the educational process. We focus on that and, allowing as I was saying, our employees to really decide now where we're going to spend our money and our time, because we can give money to some of these organizations to show that we care, but then also really getting out and working with Habitat for Humanity or working with the local children's home and these kind of places where you can really see yourselves making a difference. I think one of the things that's really important about that is you want to do it for the right reasons, and we want to do that because of the focus on giving back and helping our community. I think people a lot of times, can look at some of that kind of stuff and say, well, why are they doing that, and are they doing it for the right reasons? But if you are doing it for the right reasons and you are, then your employees are going to feel that, and I think the community feels that as well.
Wendy, I know your company is active here too, and do you provide employees paid time off to be engaged in volunteer activities?
We do. Thanks, Debra. We have what we call volunteer paid time off. So our employees are all allocated a certain number of hours per year where they can spend their time, instead of at their desks working, out in the community, whether that's like some of the things David mentioned, Habitat for Humanity or Feed My Starving Children, or a number of other organizations, because we think it's really important as well to not just do donations where folks are spending money. Sometimes your employees don't have the money to be able to donate. So we really want to make sure all of our employees are able to participate. So not only are they events and organizations that the employees have suggested, but we also have an employee-run Caring for the Community Committee who decides what some of these events are. But we've done, back-to-school drives, we've done food drives, we've done Adopt a Family during other holiday times. But then we also do things, like I mentioned, where you can donate your time or resources or your intelligence. We do mentoring. We do e-mentoring with local schools and things like that, so that it's not always come and spend money at an event. It's donating time and making sure it's those other resources. And I think it's critical what David mentioned as well in terms of doing it for the right reasons, because I do think employees can tell if you're doing it for that press release, if you're doing it for that hit on social media. So we also use it as a recruitment tool and talk about how our Education Foundation solicits grant suggestions from our employees. Can get a grant for up to like $25,000, which is a huge dollar amount to a lot of local organizations that are really struggling. So getting our employees involved in that way really makes it that much more apparent that we're doing this not for a spot on the local news, because this is the kind of organization we want to be, to really involve our employees. And that helps with not only employee engagement, but recruiting and retention as well.
At our session in San Diego, someone spoke up and talked about how someone at their company had actually been sort of forced by their parent to quit because they just didn't like the idea of someone in their family working in the collection industry. And I think that these kinds of activities can help us to turn that around. Teri, have you seen the retention and recruitment benefits from community involvement at your company?
Well, I will tell you that PFC is in its second century, and one of the things is we have a 6 to 7 year tenure for collectors, which is almost unheard of in the collection industry, and we're very involved in the community. Companies in general that are involved in the community they do 100% better on key performance indicators than those that are not involved in their community. The employees in general just have better morale. They find that their work is more meaningful, and they just in general have more fun. And although the tone comes from the top to really get things going, I have to echo what both David and Wendy said. So it may start with leadership, but the employees, they own it because they are the ones that make the suggestions and they have the involvement. Because when you're working with your community, you meet your neighbors, you meet other business leaders, and you meet other people, and your customers, they want to align themselves with companies that are successful and that have valuable goods and services, but they also want to see that charitable component in everyone. Fortune 500 magazine actually did a survey, and they showed that it is cross-generational, that 2/3 of people want to go to work for companies that have that charitable component and that are involved in the community. They want to align themselves with those successful companies. And that's why when we're doing that recruiting, whether it's David, Wendy, or any of us that are heavily involved in our community, we have that retention and we keep those employees because they know that we have that involvement. At PFC, we're heavily involved in the United Way, in junior achievement, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We do a lot of Relay for Life, Toys for Tots. But again, it's something that is suggested by the employees, and it's little bits and pieces. Sometimes, as to Wendy's point, I'm going to echo that, it's not just about donating, giving money. We also do the paid time off where you can volunteer your time. And sometimes it's just little things, or we don't even do the press releases. It's just little things here and there. And sometimes it is the bigger things where it's an annual drive. But it really is a labor of love, and it's a continuous effort. And people really like to do that because it is giving back to those in need. Cancer Society, for example, that's one thing that our employees just love to give back to, and they love that involvement.
Teri reminded me of this. Our company also does what we call a Dollars for Doers program. So if our employees track their own volunteer hours, like if you're doing this not on your volunteer paid time off, on your own time, on your weekend, after hours, you're volunteering at an organization, we set a certain threshold. And if you track those volunteer hours in our volunteer tracking system, once you hit that threshold number of hours, we will donate a certain dollar amount to that organization on your behalf in recognition of those volunteer hours. And that's, to Teri's point, that's not something that we do for the press release. That's something we do because it's in recognition of you doing that on your own time and really embracing our corporate value of service to our community.
And then that's part of it, is there's a lot of things that you end up doing. It becomes that continuous effort where you just find that it becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of that community involvement. And that, to your point, Wendy, is what the employees see, where you're not just doing it for that press release. They know that that is what the company is made of.
And to that point, Teri, this is Wendy again, and I'm interested in really all of your feedback on this. We've talked a lot about like the recruiting and the retention and, you know, kind of that employee engagement aspect, but have you also seen that your community involvement helps in recruiting clients or retaining your clients?
Yes, I believe it does. In fact, I just signed up a client a couple of months ago, and when we were doing the implementation with this client along with all of her coworkers, and we were doing the implementation and we were talking a little bit about community involvement, she said, "Oh yes, this is the part that I want all of you to hear about. This was one of my key reasons that I wanted to go with PFC, because of their community involvement, and I want all of you to listen to what they're telling you right now, because this caught my attention, because they are so parallel to what we do in our company, and we are kindred spirits here." And that was why they wanted to go with our company.
Yes, and this is Debra, and I've experienced that too. At one of my former employers, we had partnership with one of our clients, which was a large hospital group that had hospitals all over the state where we were located, and they really supported Race for the Cure. And so our company took that up, I think at first because we thought it was something our clients would do, but once we got going, our employees just loved being involved in that, and so the partnership and the bond between our employees and our client just seemed to grow much stronger. For the hospital system to sort of change its practices with its vendors and consolidate everything to one vendor, guess who they picked? It was obviously was our company, and so it just kind of goes to show how something that you start doing for maybe sort of a client satisfaction issue can become much larger and more beneficial process for everyone.
Right, but these things become organic because you're doing it because this is just what your community involvement is, or it's like compliance. It's because you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and your clients or your prospects, they see this, and people want to align themselves with people that are successful or that are doing the right thing.
I've even seen this like a question in a request for proposal. Tell us about your community involvement. What are you doing to better your communities? So I think that if it's not part of who you are as an organization, I think it will become so because I'm starting to see it in that way too. David, have you seen something similar?
I think that's a great question, and I think absolutely. I mean, I think that as I get to travel around and see clients and meet with them at conferences and those kind of things, I mean, more and more they talk about who we are as a company more so than, well, you're trailing this person in recovery or you're beating this person in recovery or something that's more business related. I think we're doing the job, and we're doing the job they hired us to do, which is to return as much money as we can to them. But when they get to know us corporately as a company and as a family, which is what we talk about, you know, Williams and Fudge being, that really keeps them here, and they want to be a part of that. And we find as we communicate with our clients through our newsletters that we send out or through other types of communication, you know, we have stuff about regulations, about what's happening in the industry, but we also tell our story. We tell about our people and what our people are doing that makes Williams and Fudge who they are. And, you know, we really do get as many comments about that as we do about the actual job that we do.
When we were in San Diego, Wendy said something that you show people your story. You don't tell them your story. And I think that when you're just doing these things naturally because they become a part of you and they are who you are, and they're asking you, or your recovery is good because your employees are happy, isn't that to Wendy's point about showing people who you are? It just all starts becoming that big ball, and it all rolls up into one and you just start showing people everything because it really is who you become?
Thanks for that, Teri. I just have to say, though, I can't take credit for that. Like, I will, but I got to give a shout out to my 10th grade English teacher, Mr. Graham. May he rest in peace. He's the one who taught me about show, don't tell in writing a paper. So I got to give credit where credit's due, but thank you for remembering that, Teri. Mr. Graham, I'm sure, is applauding.
I think people feel that, and that's what I was talking about a little bit earlier is why are you doing it and how are you doing it and how are you, I like what you said, how are you showing and telling the story? Because I think we've all got great stories, and if you can allow people to feel like they're a part of that, then, that's what managing your brand is. I mean, that's what you want your brand to be. You want people to feel that.
And I really like what David just said, too, about how that all comes back. What we've been talking about for the last few minutes all comes back to owning your story and getting your story out there. And, when your company is involved in these major events or Habitat for Humanity or Race for the Cure, whatever it might be, your company name is going to end up on somebody else's website as well. And so all those things contribute to owning your story and getting the good things out there ahead of the maybe more negative things that consumers might be saying when people search for your company on the internet.
It's proactively managing your brand. It's online reviews. It's doing Google searches. It's wanting to be out there, mentioned in a positive light, and it's wanting to actually involve our community and having that social media be more positive and all about brand management.
Exactly, and I think what it can come down to is something that you said to me earlier today, Teri, and I think also when we were in San Diego as well, that kind of brings it home and back to where we started when we were talking about the complaints, and that is that every customer interaction impacts the customer experience. A good customer or consumer experience impacts everything that we've been talking about, but also even just search results that we want to get if people are out there saying good things about us.
It's very true. Something that Walt Disney said that I didn't get a chance to say in San Diego that rings true to me and always has is whatever you do, do it well. And I think that there's so much more improvement for us to just continually look at processes for brand management. We do that with compliance every day, but whatever we do with brand management, we just always need to be looking at improving that and just do a better job all the time.
David, Teri, and Wendy, thanks so much. Do you have any sort of closing comments you'd like to make?
This is Wendy. I would just underscore what Teri just said. That really resonates. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing well. I would completely agree with that, whether that's how you're handling your complaints or managing your brand or how that all ties together, I think really, really matters and sets the tale for who you are as an organization.
Yeah, and this is David, and I think, all of us collectively, I've enjoyed talking about this with all of you guys. As an ACA, as an organization, is something that we can continue to focus on. I mean, it's exactly what both of y'all just said. It's doing the best that you can every day and doing things for the right reasons and the right way. And as we talk about that and talk about our branding and reputation as an industry, that's up to all of us to keep understanding that what we do every day is gonna impact the greater good for the whole organization. So let's continue to try to do things the right way and be the best that we can be.
That sounds like a great place for us to end our podcast today. I just want to thank Teri Plunkett, Wendy Badger, Dave Williams for joining us all.
And before we close today, I'd like to remind everyone that news and information related to the accounts receivable management industry is covered extensively in Collector Magazine and in ACA Daily's electronic newsletter, which are both available on our website at www.ACA International. And as a reminder, we will have a nice article in Collector Magazine on managing your brand in the October edition, which should be in your mailbox in the next couple of weeks. So thank you again, and this podcast and ACA's other podcasts are available on ACA's website or wherever you normally listen to podcasts. Thank you and have a good day.